Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions, and I finally shaved literally right before this. I couldn't find my 6mm, so I had to choose between a 9 and a 4. And I went with a 4, and I'm not really a big fan. It's just enough of my baby face that I'm just like, I feel like I've receded to being that 13-year-old who just realized they could grow facial hair because it started coming out, but I haven't shaved it yet. But at the same time, the top of my head looks like a mop. So just, it's this disproportionate here because I didn't go and do it when I actually went to the barber to get my hair cut. But that being said, the beard is trimmed. I will sleep much better tonight knowing that now. With that, I didn't look to see if we have a large number of questions, so I'm just going to go right into the weekly Q&A because it's actually a little later than I thought. It's almost 6 o'clock right now. I just had to feed my cat, and because of daylight saving, you know, the sun's still out and will probably still be bright for another hour or so. But thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting the show. There's been an unusual increase in activity over on the Patreon, even though, again, it is just to support the YouTube channel. It does not have any sort of major things that you get from being over there. It exists solely for that purpose, and I hope that that is abundantly clear. That being said, we had the names scrolling through the list. Made sure to update those because there was a name that was missing from the last State of the Realm. And of course, thanks to our patrons of darkness, Khuja on Jenova and Kurenai Oni. Thank you to both of you. You guys have been awesome for all of your support. Really appreciate it. I appreciate all of my patrons, and of course all of you who tune in, watch, ask questions, whatever it is you do. Thanks for being a part of the weekly Monday Q&A. With that, I'm getting tired of looking at my face in the camera already, so let's get started. I see you was asking the first question. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey Haps, I asked last week and laughed that you enjoyed my YouTube name. Yep, and there it is again. My question this week is, what is your all-time favorite raid tier since A Realm Reborn released, and why? So this is actually, I see the problem is I would love to pick pieces out of each of them. Gordius, you know, 3 obviously stands out for there. Midas stands out altogether, but I actually didn't do the kind of prog I normally do in Midas because I took an immediate break from World Prog because I was going through a move, and I moved in with my girlfriend, and then we were trying to move and find a new place, and it just took forever for me to actually get around to enjoying that raid tier properly, so I felt like I missed out a lot on Midas, so I don't have a solid opinion. Creator, I was on a job I was not prepared to play in the form of Machinist. I played terribly that raid tier, but I still look fondly back on a lot of those fights. Deltascape, no. Although Halicarnassus, and even X-Death to a lot of degrees, actually were fairly... I don't think anything other than Alt-Right was terrible, that raid tier, but... No. Sigmascape's definite no. I look back on Sigmascape as one of my least favorite raid tiers. Alphascape, really, really solid. And then we have... and by the way, I'm excluding Coil because I don't know why. Like, Coil's a mishmash of emotions for me, and I'm just not going to look back on it. And then we had Eden's Gate, and then we have Eden. You know what? I think I got to go with Alphascape thus far. At least since Heaven's Word, I guess even since the Creator tier difficulty. I'm going to go with that. If I were to include Coil, Second Coil Savage might come in pretty close, but I have a lot of issues with a lot of the Coil design from back then. You can see just how different boss design is from then. And maybe I'm also just tired of Nail because of recent events. But yeah, I'm going to go with Alphascape. Alphascape's one of my favorite raid tiers of all time. It doesn't have any of my favorite encounters, but it's so solid across the board that it's hard for me to knock it, really. Next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Good morning, Mrhappy. Long-time watcher, first-time asker. Well, thank you for asking. I've been hearing a major complaint. Dude, I trimmed my beard right here. There's a hair that's like poking the inside of my lips. So if you see me doing this video, I'm warning you right now, it's because there's a hair that's poking me kind of right there. I've been hearing a major complaint lately from the raiders that they feel there's no content. I understand that while the content they have added lately is more gathering focused, there's no ultimate. Well, to be fair, there was an ultimate, or it won't be an ultimate in 5.31. Is more accurate than there was no ultimate. There is. But I don't understand why they're so angry about that since we were told it was unlikely. When Golden Todd interviewed Yoshi at the media tour, he clearly states that they are mostly planning for 2 and then maybe 3 if something changes. Yeah. The question is, do you think they maybe are just bored because the Relic isn't out? So I think a lot of people are bored because the Relic wasn't out, and I don't think the first Relic step will absolve people of that because the first Relic step is not going to be super grindy from what they've told us. But not even that. I mean, as someone who does a lot of raiding, but I happen to have other interests in Final Fantasy XIV and disinterests. You know, I feel like any well-balanced player isn't doing absolutely everything, and I feel like over the years, that argument has kind of, you know, lost its clout because sometimes you just don't want to do every single thing in a game. And not everyone wants to do that. Even if it means there is something you could be doing, interests largely spark into whether you're bored or not. And it's just that a lot of raiders have a very narrow focus. They just want something that's making them rack their brain constantly. They want to be figuring something out that has barely been figured out up to this point. They want to be overcoming some sort of challenge. And it's just that mindset that means that once it's on farm, that's kind of gone. You know, some people really enjoy fixing up strategies or going for FF logs parses, and great. If people can get enjoyment out of that, I know that a lot of people complain that they are sometimes used as a tool for harassment, but they are also something that's reasonable for a really high-end player to want to chase after. It's just a matter of how it's being used on the flip side of things by the more middle core to casual player base, which is where I really think FF logs kind of starts to cause more issues than good that it does. But I mean, it's just about interest, and if their interest is raids or encounters of that level of design or mindless grinds, which sometimes raiders really do want that, and honestly progressing a raid tier blind is a lot like that, then 14 doesn't really have a lot of those things. But I guarantee you the relic in 0.35 will help with that, but the 0.25 relic, considering all the details they've given us, I don't think that'll really stop. And you know what? I'll be honest, it'll never stop. I'll never stop complaining that there aren't more raid bosses. I don't expect anyone else to, but it's just a matter of accepting the way something is designed, providing your feedback and opinion on it in a constructive manner. And, you know, if you're not interested in something, then find the thing you are interested in and do that. You know, you don't have to force yourself to play Final Fantasy XIV all the time. And I'm glad I don't. I'm glad that I do have interests in other things that even if other people don't enjoy it, at least I'm enjoying it. And that gives me a little bit more freedom to just kind of enjoy my time playing video games. Something I kind of lost for years on end. Alright, we got a short one here. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hello. Hope you're doing well and staying healthy. I am. I actually just kicked soda again. Dude, I went without soda for like 5 years. I moved in with my girlfriend, and there was just one Coke can, and, you know, then every time they were around, I was grabbing one. But I'm back to kicking that out. Just drink water every time I want a Coke. It's simple as that, really. Quick question, is there an effective way to spot the soccer mechanic in E6 Savage? Cleared it and still can't figure the mechanic out. I just follow the group, and depending on lag and how fast they move, I die half the time. So I think, I can just identify it real quick, but I don't really have a trick. If I'm not mistaken, there's always 3 clones that can appear. And either the clone on its own is going to be the safe spot, or the clone standing behind another clone is going to be the safe spot. I think that's how it is. You know, I don't even think about it when I do it. I can just find it so fast. But yeah, I think that's it. I think it's either the clone that's on his own is a safe spot, or if there's like 2 clones lined up, I think it's the one behind the other one. I'd have to look again though. There might be another pattern there, but I'd at least start with that. And if you see something that isn't that, ingrain it into your memory that there is something else. And if you don't see those 2 things, you know what the third thing is. It's just a process of elimination. This is probably a topic I should make a video about, because a lot of people like to ask, how do you identify mechanics day 1? Like, how do you figure that out? How did you see all that and go, well, clearly we do this? And some of it's practice, but some of it is just years of understanding how the game gives us information. I feel like that could be a valuable video for some people. Ooh, one that's only 3 days ago. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hello. Hope you're doing great and everything in and out of the game. Third time asking us of a bonus of a free Bahamut 0 amount if Nomura and Yoshi P are drunk enough to actually add it into the game. I don't think they ever will be that drunk. They're going to be drunk, but not that drunk. I know you played Defu as well and have played all the previous Dissidia games. I sure have. Although, unfortunately, Duodecim I've spent the least amount of time with. I'd sold my PSP by the time I got it, so I got to play it on my friend's PSP. My question is this. If you could pick 3 villains and 3 heroes from any and all Dissidia games to be added to the jobs of 14, similar to how Squall's Gunblade is incorporated in Gunbreaker, who would you choose and which role? That's actually a really hard question. Obviously, Warrior of Light is a paladin in my eyes, so that's kind of out. I would more sooner see Warrior of Light stuff added to Paladin. I think Bartz is a big contender. So here's the thing. Onion Knight is obviously something from Final Fantasy III. But when I think of Bartz as someone who, like, as they use skills, they gain mastery on them, and then their goal is to maintain the mastered status of skills. I think that would be a really interesting prospect. That'd probably be the closest I'd ever expect, like a weapon master, which technically fits Firion as well, especially in Defu. Firion's EX skill is literally weapon master. But for me, I think Bart's. The idea of mastering a skill by using it multiple times in a row and then maintaining that mastered status across several skills, I think that could be interesting depending on the way that they do it. For another one, man, that gets really tough. Honestly, from that point on, it actually gets a lot harder for me to really just nail something down that I would really like. Yeah, man, and I'm trying not to include 11 and 14 because it's kind of stupid, you know. We're talking about incorporating single player into multiplayer. Man, I don't know. That's like, for me, Bart is a clear contender. And it's not that like Zidane or Terra or like Strago or Realm or Gao. Obviously 6, I can go through a million different options since it's my favorite. It's not that none of those would be like ways I think they could do things, but they're not heroes I think of like, oh, I want that in an MMO. Like, I'd sooner take Renoa as a Beastmaster with the dog. And that, you know, we probably get that as a limited job. So unfortunately, I only really have one answer for the hero, and that's Bart's. For the villain, it's kind of the same problem. Like, the one really interesting one is Golbez. You know, the idea of this mage, this mage that has this dragon pet. We have Ranjit. We have, you know, another character that has a dragon pet that is no doubt inspired by Ranjit. So there's some precedence for that, almost, with Golbez. But it's not like Arden is just like Noctis, you know, they're literally one and the same. So if I pick one, there's no point picking the other, and if I pick one, that means both of them is the answer, so that's kind of cheating. And then, you know, Caius, just dude with a big sword. Like everyone, we have a dude with a big sword already. It's a little more complicated than that, but still. Obviously, Ultimecia, people think of the time magics, and Sephiroth, everyone thinks of the cloning, or, you know, just straight up, you know, Sephiroth with the sword. I think of, like, you know, all the Jenova clones and save for Sephiroth and all that. Sin is not very interesting. Jekt is not that he's not interesting. He's kind of like fits the Berserker bill, so maybe, but I don't really have a role in mind for him because it kind of feels like it would make sense for it to be either or, even though he's, you know, yeah, he's a DPS in Dissidia Opera Omnia, but I could see him being otherwise. Yeah, unfortunately, those are the only really good answers I have. It's Bart's for the hero and Golbez for the villain. You know, I feel like I could say the other ones, but I guess there's not other ones that I'm as interested in, so I'll just do one for each. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hello there. How you doing? You doing alright? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Hope you're doing well. Long-time viewer since 2014. First asker, so I have a lifetime bonus of grade A Wagyu beef. Oh my god. I see a spoiler question here, so I'm going to actually take both these questions and put them in the spoiler section, and this will be the start of the spoiler section. I totally forgot to do the thumbs up at the second part last week, so just, this is the start of the spoiler section. Nothing spoilers on the screen right now. You now know if you're watching this. If you skip to the part that doesn't have questions at the end, that's how you know there's no more spoilers. I should actually add a timestamp for that in the description as well. I'm sure there's a comment under here saying to do that. Do you plan to add a few explanations around party finder strats for your upcoming guides for Edensverse? I like to do content on pugs, but figuring out what a few acronyms and slangs mean can be rough, and sometimes I think we need an encyclopedia. MMOs in general need encyclopedias just because, you know, everyone makes up acronyms for everything. So that's actually been a reason why the Savage Guides have taken longer. Almost every time I'm like comfortable with everything I've collected on a Savage Guide, like a new strat pops up. Like, for example, I was doing E5 Savage and I had never done Donut Strat. I saw someone else doing Donut Strat. I said, hey, can I borrow footage for you for that? And now that's it. I've got everything for E5 Savage, I feel. So that guide's almost done. But I'm doing them very slowly. I'm not trying to crank them out super crazy like I used to. It's too stressful for me, man. I'm just trying to get these guides out, make sure they're on the channel, make sure I have a reference point for them, and that they have stuff that the Party Finder uses. I want them to be very comprehensive. At that, go back to a little bit of the longer guide style for people who really want to understand everything they might see in the Party Finder. So yeah, trust me, there's going to be some of that information, the acronyms as well. As for your spoiler question, and since we're in the spoiler section already, don't need to do anything fancy here. Do you think the Source Lake will be used to return the Scions home? That scene where Thancred rescues Ariane from the lake felt a little suspicious. Well, the lake on the first has nothing to do with the lake on the Source. And you have to remember that even though the shards are a reflection of the Source in its ether is very different in the way that everything else lost function, especially after the flood happened over on the first. So it wouldn't be surprising. I mean, you have to remember that the Crystal Tower is right next to Silver Tear Lake, which is the lake you're referring to. But realistically, the one thing that's stopping them right now is the power of Allagan blood to access Allagan technology, which is what they use to travel through time in the first place with the Crystal Exarch. So I don't think this is going to have anything to do with it. It could be where they pop out on the other end because it's got so much ether it almost might act like a beacon. But the Crystal Tower is just as likely to do the same thing. So realistically, just the whole problem with the Exarch's blood and using that to get back to the source. And I think that will be resolved at 5.3. I think the Eden's Quest have made that abundantly clear. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hello. Will other gathering classes get a neat instance or event like what Fisher's got? Perhaps a crystal cave for miners or an ancient forest for botanists. We were talking about this on my live stream. I don't think they will. And I don't know that they need to. So ocean fishing is kind of cool, but it's also very shallow on the surface. No pun intended. It just doesn't have a whole lot of function in the game right now. Yeah, you can get a minion amount, but you can't like get fish for recipes. The script gain is very mediocre. It's a good leveling option occasionally, but I think top priority, increase the amount of scripts that are rewarded from it. Make it feel good for level 80s to go in there and walk away with a reasonable amount of white scripts in particular for an event that's, you know, time sensitive, I feel. Number 2 is maybe add functioning fish, things that can appear in the aquarium, things that can be used in recipes, and make it so that they still add to that point value. And then, of course, update it frequently. Those are the 3 things they need for ocean fishing, and I'm scared if they were to do that for other gatherers, that maybe they would mess it up again. I know it's not a great feeling to have, but I've also played this game for years, and I just kind of know that they like to release something in its most bare form and add to it once they've seen the degree of interest. Does it function properly? Did we do everything right? And it always leads to a little bit of dissension in opinion about said activity, and ocean fishing is no different. Diadem might kind of function like that, but it's more directly tied to Ishgard Restoration, so not entirely, but sort of an alternative to that, just not on this like really strict timer like we have for the ocean fishing. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy, long-time viewer. Your series on Revisiting 11. That's how I found your channel. Loved it. Glad you're enjoying it. We're actually going to be probably doing an 11 video this week on the new Odyssey content that's coming out. First-time asker, welcome. Just wondering what your opinion is on limited jobs. I'm a big fan of Bloom myself. I feel IC has sort of stumbled through its design. Feel like even amongst people who enjoy it, that's fairly undeniable. Considering it was originally built as a solo-friendly gameplay experience, do you think the method of obtaining some of the rewards are at odds with what the class was supposed to be? Seems to me that this would have been a much more thematic with keeping it with Blue's design if they added those sorts of rewards to something like the Mass Carnival, but way harder. Bonus question: if another limited job is ever added, what do you think it'd be, and what do you personally want it to be? I'll do the bonus question first. They've already name-dropped Puppet Master and Beastmaster. My prediction since the beginning of the expansion, and I've locked it in, not changing my mind until they tell us otherwise, that Beastmaster will have a Blue Mage update in 0.3 to level 70. We'll get Beastmaster starting at level 60 in 0.5, and then we'll see Blue Mage and Beastmaster updates going into the next expansion. That is my prediction. Doesn't matter if it's wrong, just a prediction, but Beastmaster or Puppet Master, if they do another one. They've already name-dropped them, so they have to be my guesses, one of the two, but Beastmaster's going to be mine. As for my opinion on them, they definitely stumped. They have no idea what they're doing with it. I have no faith. It doesn't matter if I'm enjoying it. I don't feel like they have any idea what they actually want to do with it. Everything's at odds. Solo-friendly, no specific role, you know, and then nothing they release is really, like, you could have actually soloed most of the spells. It was very difficult. It clearly didn't feel like it was designed for that. They buffed the spell rate, something that was annoying people, but then takes away a lot of the time you actually spend on the job, and then add these very raid-centric achievements and a few new mass carnivals. Now all of a sudden you can absorb rolls from people, you've got like role-specific skills. The dude literally 180s in the quest, like, boom, you just can do everything. And then to further that, he instead makes you kind of take select roles, like still enforcing that they can do anything, but now they like have to kind of goes, well, actually, they can specifically tank it, specifically, like, they can do any of them, but they can just focus on that as well. So it was kind of weird, and I feels like they have no idea. Like, they said, oh, there's not a good enough reason to group up for the previous one, and the solo experience is not doing so great. So I'm like, well, we'll add more carnivals, and we'll add raid achievements, which barely anyone's going to be capable of getting. It was really weird. I don't think they have any idea what they're doing. It makes me really doubt that another limited job is really coming. But I've already predicted the Beastmaster thing, so I can't back out on it now. Alright, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey Haps, I've been a long time lurker with a non-14 question. I noticed you put a decent amount of time into Ring Fit. Not recently. I've been playing it and enjoying it a lot. My question is, how was your experience? Hold on, I gotta move the actual OBS out the way because I can't well, there wasn't really that much more to grab. How has your experience been having it in hand for a decent amount of time now? Any tips to maximize effectiveness? So, a little bit of a flashback. If you go back to my very early days in the channel, I had started posting videos regularly just after a shoulder injury that I had taken and losing my job as an internal tech support in New York City for a company that was there, a little startup company that had been bought out by Vodafone. So, I was in much better shape back then, and I had this very like gamer mentality when it comes to fitness, where I literally go until I break myself, and that's not very safe, but it is what ends up taking me. It's what's always taken me the furthest whenever I've dedicated my mind and my body to that. And unfortunately, it's also led to exactly the injury that made it so I had to stop doing it for a while. So my biggest advice is to find a good equilibrium. Don't be afraid to bump up the difficulty and shorten the amount of time that you actually do it, but also make sure that if at any point you screw something up, that you're not just like, well, I have to finish my workout. That's just big number one. I went super ham on it, and I also had to make sure I was actually switching up the exercises that I was doing on it, and it was really good. We did it for like 31, 32 days out of like 36, 37 possible days we could have done it, and it was great. I still think it's one of the best things on the Switch, and I really should be doing it more. Like, come on. Giving up the soda is number one, and then that's number two. Another thing is, at the end of your workouts, if you have a little bit of energy, I would do this at the end, or if you don't want to work out for that day, but you still want to get a little bit of a pump on. The challenges in the menu, the ones where you like do as many reps as you can in 20 seconds, those things are brutal if you take them super seriously. So at the end of a workout, if you want to max yourself out, do a few of those. Or if on a day, like just on a rest day, only do those and just see how you do and like mark that success. You want to have markers for success over several periods of time. I like to do every other week because I feel like if you look at every week and you don't see improvement, it's kind of discouraging to a lot of people if you can't quantify that, oh, it's only been a week. But then the second week goes by, and if the second week isn't that much better than the first week, it's just too much. I like to have gaps so you can see bigger levels of improvement versus these like 1 week or less gaps. Or some people weigh themselves every day and they drive themselves off a fucking wall, and that's a terrible idea. So those are my tips for maximizing effectiveness. Keep bumping your difficulty up until you find a sweet spot, and then even then be willing to go further. Do those exercises at the end of workouts or on days that you were gonna take it easy or take a break. And 3, just be safe. And, you know, keep markers of your success, but make sure not to hurt yourself. Those are almost, you could, not even to Ring Fit, you could apply that to almost anything in regards to exercise, and all 3 of those pieces of advice would make sense. All right, next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy, how you doing today? Hope you're doing well. Can't complain. I only have a face. I assume you haven't been interested in out-of-bounds areas in the game. So I actually used to be very early in A Realm Reborn when there were a lot more easy-to-access ones. I had a random, like there used to be one south of Camp Dragonhead, over by where there's like a few Ixals in a cave, where you literally just jumped out off the world. You like jumped into a cliff and you were just out of the game. It was the easiest out of bounds ever to do. There's one like, there used to be one in East Shroud that was super easy. So I'm aware of them, and I'm actually aware of what you're about to say here, because, you know, people tell me this stuff on stream all the time. Recently discovered that a lot of the older Realm Reborn out-of-bound areas have been patched with the addition of flight barriers similar to Heaven's Word and Beyond. Moreover, a lot of background details have been modified, cleaned up, expanded upon, and reworked. There's a strong speculation we'll be getting flying with the A Realm Reborn rework in 5.3. You know what? I'm someone who still thinks they won't do it, but I also can't deny evidence, technical evidence, that they're setting up for it. Here's the thing. I still don't think they'll do it in 5.3. I think that's for 6.0, after being told that that exists. So, we might disagree on the timing, but now at this point, I think it's undeniable that they are going to do it. Because you just don't add those things if you're not going. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I was aware of that, and I think at this point it's undeniable it's going to happen. Just I don't think it'll happen in 5.3. I guess to actually answer the question, how would you feel? Cool. What does it matter? They're so small. I'll just fly over them in like 2 seconds anyway. I barely have any reason to go to them as it is right now. So sure, go nuts. All right, this one doesn't have a hashtag, but I see all the makings of a question. Hello, Mr. Happy. I have 2 questions for you. For the health of future trials, would it be better for them to give 2 totems like Hades, or make it so that the Primal drop 1 weapon and then a coffer? I feel like we just had this question last week. If we didn't have it last week, we definitely had it the week before. I think 1 weapon and a coffer is the compromise they're going to make. Just because, yeah, you've already said they've proven that model works with Savage. You give the team a drop, you give the team to choose who gets a drop, and then you still give them a resource to buy drops that they want. It literally covers every base. Some might say it's a little bit of too much loot infusion, and that kind of shortens the amount of time you might need to interact with the content. But 14's never been about trying to force you to do stuff like, unless you really, really want to grind something out. Like, they add a few things for those hardcore grinders, and then the majority of things are, you can get it done in a few hours and then be happy with yourself with it. So that's what I think. I think they're gonna go the Savage route. I know there's a read more, but it doesn't. Okay, it's not that much longer. But you said you had 2 questions. I have 2 questions. Oh, I guess your first part, like another upgrade piece that would drop off the last fight. There's not 2 questions in here. I guess technically, do you think they'll do this or this? It's 1 question that's worded as 2 questions. The other question is, what do you think about making tome weapons possibly equivalent to raid weapons? No, not unless you're willing to make the upgrade drop from the last fight. I mean, that's pretty much all that could quantify it. Otherwise, no. That's just flat out no. 2 Irish people in a row. High five. I don't know what that was about, but hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hi, Haps. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Question for you about the next melee DPS, whenever we go to, who knows. Which of the 3 archetypes within melee DPS would you prefer? A relatively slow, hard-hitting with a decent bit of armor akin to Dragoon, resource-focused burst DPS like Samurai or Monk, or a support caster mixed with Ninja that uses resources on ranged attacks? You know, the thing is, I wouldn't quantify anything past Dragoon as what you've stated for them. Like, resource focused burst DPS like Samurai and Monk, like, not inaccurate, but not ways I would think to describe them. I kind of look at the melees as 2 categories, fast and slow. And there's 3 fast and 1 slow right now. Samurai, Monk, and Ninja are all really fast. Now, Dragoon has a ton of OGCDs that it needs to manage during burst windows, and that makes it feel really fast. But it does still, especially even with all the speeding up of the jumps that they've done over the years, there's still so many little things that you need to avoid doing on Dragoon to clip your GCD or clip animations. So I would like to see something slow, like something that it feels slow. Like, it's rough. Something that feels like how a Black Mage feels, but in melee range, where you have, like, Black Mage is literally fire 4, fire 4, fire 4, fire 1, fire 4. I know that's not really the opener anymore, but you get what I mean. Like, something that's not insanely busy, but it needs to maintain its momentum to keep that crushing force going, and a mistake is insanely brutal to the recovery of it. Which is, you know, still doesn't even really make sense, because if you screw up on some of these melees, it's just so downhill. But I think you understand what I mean. It's just that it still doesn't really make sense for me, like my explanation, in the context of the game. I think it'll be maiming, whatever it is, if they don't make a whole new set for it, which I really, really hope they don't. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hope all is well. As someone who has all crafters at level 80 and nearly every job at 80, literally the same boat as me, I feel like we have a massive inventory issue. Between crafting materials and the amount of armor sets, I have no room for anything. The Glamour Dresser is a good start, but being limited to 400 is not. See, this is where we lose each other, because I have so much space wasted, and I feel like I have so much space left. But I also have 4 retainers. To be fair, because I have a legacy sub, I have, you know, the 2 base retainers plus 2 more, because that equals the cost of a normal sub, so it makes sense for me to do. So if you don't have that, then okay, yes, you're in a much worse position. But I haven't even come close to using all my Glamour Dresser stuff. Seeing the server issue they have, but I feel like this game is getting to a point where I am penalized for playing it in force. Honestly, I'd have to see your inventory, because I see some crafters' inventory, and I can tell you right now that not every crafter has the same, how do I say this, means of item management as the other. Because I know people with everything at 80 that don't have 8 retainers, that don't have that much issue managing things, because they don't they go for an adequate amount of items and not too many items. A lot of crafters I see, I look in there, like they'll post like a picture of their inventory on like Reddit or Twitter or something, and I'll see and I'll be like, but why do you have that many crafting items? And a lot of times the response is, I'm always prepared, you never know, there's a new update coming. But there's a line that can be drawn in the sand there of what you're realistically going to do with the number of materials you have. So without seeing your inventory, I don't know how much of this is you actually needing that space versus you really wanting it, which is totally fine to have. But I don't think it is actually as much a problem as people say. I feel like we have more than enough. Honestly, the only thing I think that has ever needed expansion is the armory chest itself. Because you can, no matter how you manage your saddlebag or your retainers or your actual inventory, if you have every job at 80, the armory chest just isn't prepared. Like, it is prepared for that, but it's barely prepared for it. It's bare minimum prepared for it. But everything else, I feel like people sometimes just need to let go. You know, sometimes you won't need that thing. You just not, you don't know if I'll need this. No, you won't. If you do, you'll have to make a reason, like a really big reason. That being said, I do agree in this one little comment. If we had something more like transmog and WoW, it'd be a lot better. Dude, even Final Fantasy XI's glamour system would practically be better. And it saves some inventory. It basically opens new inventory. Kind of like our glamour dresser, but still better. And transmog would be even better. So, I agree with that. I have a feeling there's going to be more questions than I can answer. Just a feeling I'm getting. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Not Monday, Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Aloha to aloha. I don't know where he is. I fed him and he pissed off. Hope you're feeling better this week. I sure am. Asked us last week, but I know they're kind of quirky questions, so it's okay if you don't have an opinion on it. But if you do, I'd be interested to hear what you think. Well, we're just going to have to wait and find out right there. But it's good that you asked the question from last week, because I'm getting into it now. With the release of 7 Remake soon upon us, do you think we will get a 7 Remake crossover? He's already told us within the last couple months they are not doing it because they don't want to pull resources away from the 7 Remake team. It is not a one-sided thing, a crossover, unless it's PSO2 apparently. So no, that's if we do, it won't be till a future part when they've kind of gotten the workflow down to some point. And even then, the scale of it, you know, they said they'd want to do something of fairly significant scale. And, you know, that obviously takes even more resources. So it's a toss-up, but not for the release of 7 Remake itself, for the first part. And if so, what items or gear would you like to see? Honestly, I think we have a ton of items that are already from 7. Like, let's just be real about it. We have bosses that are already from 7. We have locations. We have Costa del Sol. So, I mean, it's like you add, like, you know, Sephiroth's sword for samurais, all those way too long. You add the outfits, or maybe you add the car from the car chase for something. Maybe you add, like, Red 13's comb as, like, a hair adornment or something for, like, glam. Like, there's a million things you could add, gear and glam-wise. But we have a lot. We actually do have quite a few Final Fantasy VII things already in the game. So I don't know. We already have minions for it as well. We have what? We have Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith from last FanFest too. So Sephiroth minion, Sephiroth outfit. You know, I don't know. Literally any character is a minion or their gear within feasibility as glamour. Alright, I see the word long-winded, so I'm scared. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy, I have a rather long-winded question about raid mentality that I certainly won't blame you for not answering. I mean, I answer the other ones, why not this one? It actually isn't that long of a question. As a long-time raider, the player type I've become most frustrated with over the years of trying to clear content are so-called uptime fiends. People who, during learning and progression, are so overwhelmingly focused on squeezing out every last GCD that they cause numerous unnecessary wipes that could have been completely avoided had they played slightly safer. I know as a healer, I always play it safe and overheal quite a bit when I'm learning fights for the first time. So it always annoys me when I see other players waste tons of time trying to chase some fantasy pink parse when we haven't even seen Hardened Rage yet. In my experience, these type of players are often a bigger barrier to learning and clearing fights in a timely manner than players who are slow to pick up on mechanics. I'll disagree with that last part. People who are slow to pick up mechanics, in my opinion, are certainly the people that make it hardest to prog. The people who make it hardest to clear are the people who die over and over again. So I think there's like a mix in between the two. I think there's a fine line to draw between being a, quote, uptime fiend to being someone who just knows that there is a way to play that situation optimally. The difference is between those two players is one who knows that their GCD earlier was slightly delayed and they can't do it now. They screwed up. The other one who doesn't realize they lost like 0.2 seconds on a GCD, and then they try doing that same trick they do later and they die. There's a few different things that kind of play into this. Sometimes it's tanks greeting, and you don't want your melee to just leave the boss ahead of the tanks. You just don't want that. Sometimes the tanks are like, well, if I move the boss, I might miss a GCD, so I'm gonna more slowly drag the boss, and then you get clipped by an AoE, and then they just have to find that sweet little spot. But there are certainly people who are like this. There are certainly people who literally block out everything else from raid in favor of searching for uptime and die repeatedly during prog. But you should be at least somewhat taking those risks when you're, how do I say this? When you haven't hit hard in rage and you're not sure how far off you are on it, getting those calculations out of the way earlier in the prog versus trying to do it when you're looking for hard in rage is really important to beating hard in rage. Strategies themselves also really come into play here, although everyone always has these everyone always has some like safe strat they've settled on. It really depends on the mechanic. I'll give you a mechanic that I think people agreed on that costs runs in E8 Savage in particular. Now, Light Rampant's an obvious one. People screw up Light Rampant all the time, but that is not a melee exclusive problem. Let's be very clear about that. That being said, the look away mirror is a big one where people just try to get the GCD and they get clipped by a mirror. Sometimes it's not even people greeting. Sometimes it's people just not understanding how big the mirror AoE radius is. But a lot of the times it's people greeting and getting stunned there. And it's literally just like trying to do it like to the millisecond. You see like just somebody dies, and it's so weird and so frustrating because it's one of the easiest things to avoid. There are mechanics I think it's better to play safer. That would be one of them. But there's also mechanics where getting the timing down during prog to make sure you get adequate amounts of uptime to make sure you beat the enrage and don't have a 0.1% wipe is important. It's just within reason and within context of the fight. There's really no other way to judge that. But if somebody has literally been dying on a mechanic every time because they say, because I'm trying to get that GCD, you need to tell them to play a little bit safer. Lose that one GCD. We need to see the rest of the fight. We need to see Hardened Rage. We need to know just how tight that check and our nerves really are before we push it to the level you're trying to push it to. And on contrast that, we have a short one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, happy. We have so far 4 EX mounts and 3 weapons to go. 4 EX mounts and 3 weapons. Well, okay, so to be fair here, I'll hold on, let me finish reading it. Plus a new Minstrel's Ballad for the main story at the end of 5.3. Do you think we'll get more EX mounts this patch cycle, or do you think we'll only get 2 more weapons? That alone would be 8 EX mounts, maybe some in the new trials, but we won't get new dungeons instead of trials. Okay, so let's be clear. Let's go back to Stormblood. You have the 2 at the start. You have Lakshmi, you have Susanoo. Then you have Shinryu at EX. Then you have Byakko. So we're sitting at 4. Then you have, who was 5.3? Tsukiyomi. Then you have Suzaku and Siri. That sits at 7. There is no guarantee we get more than 7 mounts in this expansion. It's possible, but there's no guarantee. Because people are still iffy on whether or not we'll really fight Sapphire in the form of an EX trial. And then there's also the question of the new EX trial that we're getting. We don't know if that has a mount. It's a safe assumption that it might, but because it's part of the Relic quest, it just doesn't follow all the same rules. Or we don't know if it does yet. So I would say a safe bet is still 7 mounts. But for the first time in a long time, there is a possibility of a mount with the upcoming EX trial, which would push it to 8. And if they do Sapphire on top of the 5.3, then it would push it to 9. So I'd say 9 is the highest you can guess. It could be higher, but I think that's the most reasonable prediction if you're someone who thinks we'll get more than 7 mounts this expansion. All right, I took a short break because my internet was kind of crapping out. It actually doesn't affect the recording at all because I already had all the questions loaded, but it's a little darker now, I noticed, to the next part of the recording. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. First time asker here. Welcome. Made it a mission to start Savage raiding this expansion, and one of the hardest things for me is time, specifically finding a static with an awkward work schedule. I did go through the Party Finder last patch, but I only got to E3, and due to how late I started, both due to work and Blue Mage content, love Blue Mage, started to find a duty completion raid. Now I'm at the mercy of getting gear via weekly rewards through Eden's Verse. 2 questions. Should I stick to the Party Finder and make an effort to make a static? And 2, what could I do to be better prepared if I run into the same situation before next tier? Recruitment threads on Reddit, Discord, there's all sorts of places you can go for recruitment, and there are other people that have the exact same problem that you have. And everyone's problem's a little different. Sometimes it's people who work nights and want to play either early morning during the day. And they sometimes transfer to like a JP data center or an EU data center to join a static there. I find it's a lot more common that EU players with open schedules tend to do the opposite and come to NA. I know a lot of EU or Australian or New Zealand raiders who do play on the NA data centers because of just generally better, generally better time frame for them. So that's an option also, to not just limit to where your character is and maybe be willing to either server transfer and make another character on another data center. 2, I think you should be doing the Party Finder anyway. If you don't have a static, you have no reason. If you really want to be like learning raids and you want to be progressing yourself and getting better, at the very least, the Party Finder serves as a learning experience. Even if it gives you so many angry stories later, it's still experience instead of just stopping, like cold stop and just being done. And number 3, it depends on what you actually do for your job. A lot of raiders have normal jobs, but they save up all their time off and they use it for 4 days, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to get into those raids on the first days and beat it. My prog group was only made to do prog this raid tier. We were not ever going to be clearing content on the weekly as a static. So that's another option as well. Trying to find a group that specifically you've put time aside to prog with on week 1. Get as much done as you can. Maybe finish the whole tier, depending on how comfortable you and the rest of the team are, how aligned your goals are. And then at the very least, you've cleared it all. And then you can go into duty complete Party Finders if it's not like a long-term solution. So there are a lot of different solutions that you have for this, but you are among a group of people that will struggle the most to actually like go through your clears, because all the suggestions I've made are all contingent on the type of job you have and the type of free time you actually have. I don't know how many hours you have. I don't know how many days you have. Even if I did, I wouldn't be the right person to give you advice, because maybe you have a job where you can get called in at any moment. I couldn't know. So that's my best advice with just a blanket statement that you've given me, and hopefully one of those things applies to you. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, first time asker, long time viewer. Welcome. With Shadowbringers, we saw the trust system in New Game Plus, the first being heavily popular at the beginning of the expansion to level DPS rolls and skipping queues, and the later not being widely adopted by the community, as the devs might expect it, since there's 0 rewards and you might as well just level another character rather than using it. My question is, with Square Enix being known as having multiple iterations of their systems as the expansions and patches are launched, what are your expectations regarding both these systems? Trusts, they'll expand it probably to old. I expect 5.3 will have trusts for A Realm Reborn. I fully expect it. I think by 6.0, there will be trusts in Heavensward and or Stormblood. And then they'll also be using trusts for the new stuff, the same way we had it in Shadowbringers. That's my blanket expectation, but nothing too much more advanced than that. As for New Game Plus, I don't think they ever do much. I don't think they ever add experience to it. I don't think they ever add rewards to it. Maybe a title, something like that. But I think it serves the purpose that they want it to. That you go back and you can do it again without making a new character. Not everyone wants to make a new character. Let's be very clear about that. There's a difference between having to actually level a character or just wanting to replay through a chapter of the story, a short chapter, or even more than that, but just without having to start over and just go do everything from scratch again on a different character. Not everyone wants to do that. I think New Game Plus is hitting its target market. It's just that its target market is very, very small. So those are my expectations for both those systems. Alright, I forgot because I started the recording over. I actually have no idea how long this video is anymore, but we'll see. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Simple question. First though, hope things are good. And how are you? Thank you for asking. And I hope you're doing well too. I'm doing alright. Thank you. Now for the question. What do you say when people say 14 is stupid easy? Do you feel it's that easy? I don't think it's that easy, as I feel 14 asks you to do a lot. But I see many people brush it off. I mean, for the entire game. So what do you think 14 is easy on everything? I think it depends on what you mean by easy. Because I wouldn't... Listen, no matter how much I've played this game, I could think an individual mechanic is easy. I can think... Dude, I thought everything... I thought, like, the majority of Epic of Alexander post, like, maybe one or two mechanics. Like, I thought that Nisi in the second phase was the hardest thing. I didn't think Wormhole was the hardest thing. But mathematically speaking, it is Wormhole is the hardest thing there. So, a lot of it comes down to feel. I will say the game does not ask enough of the player before you unlock Savage Raids. It just doesn't. The ladder that gets you there, it's a steep ladder. And I really, really wish they'd find a better means of introducing game mechanics to players. They've tried just by putting them in more content, but it doesn't work. So ultimately... everything's easy if you've been doing it for years and years and years. So you'll at least, not even if you don't necessarily find it easy, but you certainly won't require an effort. But it's easy to say that something's easy when you've already done it. It's when people who haven't done it say it's easy. That's kind of where it's like, all right, mister, you kind of are not allowed to have an opinion. You can say it looks easy, but until you do it, the rest of it's not too. The rest of it, there are people who jump the gun on their opinions and stuff. But it's just, everyone always says that after they've done it. Of course it's easy after you've done it. That's good. That's why you learned it in the first place. Dude, multiplication was hard when I first picked it up in, like, kindergarten or first grade or whenever the fuck we learned that. But I can do 9 times 9 and know it's 81 off the top of my head now. Like, it's the same thing. And I know people will say it's not exactly the same thing. You know, that's the more... Think of this more like, you know, PEMDAS or something. Someone's going to make some sort of analogy to math now that I've said that. But I think it is... I think I'm not actually the right person to answer this. Because I think it's easy. But there are plenty of people who don't. And I'm not going to tell those people they're bad or they're wrong for not thinking it's easy. There's people with different... learning speeds, there's people with different skill sets, there's people of different ages, there's people with different experience with MMOs, there's people with different experience with video games, people with different experience with Final Fantasy games in particular. So many variables that I trust me, if I'm in the middle of a dungeon and someone's like playing like shit, I'm like, oh my god, it's so fucking easy, how are you fucking that up? But deep down I know that could be their first time doing the dungeon. There's more variables. I think it's easy. That doesn't mean other people have to think it's easy. I don't think any game everyone should agree on that matter. It's just, I don't actually think 14's easy to understand, though. I think I understand it well because I've played it for years. There are so many hardcore raiders that actually don't understand shit about Final Fantasy 14. They just know raiding. And I would say to them, well, then you can't say shit's all easy when you don't even fucking understand it. So... This answer's all over the place. It's just as frustrating an answer as it probably was frustrating for you to ask the question. Alright, so because I don't remember the length of the first half of the video before my internet started messing around, I'm going to make this the last question. I quickly scrolled through some of the other ones. There were 2 about tunnel vision, which my piece of advice is generally to move things closer to where you consider your tunnel of vision to be. So if there's things resting along the edge of the tunnel that you have tunnel vision with, it kind of forces you to expand it, and then you just create a UI that forces you to expand that tunnel to encompass the entire game. There was also, I was right, there was someone who said you should add a description for the spoilers, so yes, that's going to be in this video. There's someone who asked about, you know, types of healers. There's a few comments about the wife question we had last week, where they're having a hard time communicating about improvements and she doesn't want to play the game anymore. So there's quite a few things, but this just is a really simple one we're going to do for the last one, because some of the other remaining ones I don't have great answers for either. So hashtag Mrhappy Mondays, what job do you simply not care about or the least interested in, and why? How would you change if you could? Hello to you too, by the way. So I want to make this clear. If you don't like something, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs changes, but it's when a mob mentality of people, or like it's mass accepted that an opinion is generally considered correct when jobs start needing adjustment. My opinion, I don't think means anything on this, but I will give you an answer. I don't care about Dragoon. Every time I play it, every expansion I play it, I have no issue understanding it. I just don't like it. That's it. I wouldn't change it. I don't think... I'd rather let Dragoons who play it dictate the changes than me, someone who has never once shown any interest in the job, dictate what they should change. Because it shouldn't be about me anyway. They're not me they're trying to play. They should be trying to please the people who play Dragoon. Maybe their feedback would make more people enjoy it. I don't think mine would. Mine would just be like, I don't like it. I don't think they'll ever make me like it. Maybe they will. I don't think I'll ever like Dragoon. So that's my answer to the last question for this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. So thank you, everyone, for asking questions for this week's episode. Sorry again at the end if I didn't get to yours. I tried to cover a couple of different questions there towards the end, or at least acknowledge a few various comments that we actually have. So hopefully that covered a little bit more, but if your question didn't get answered, you might want to try again in the next episode. I have a feeling this video is probably close to 50 to 52 minutes long, so I'm going to wrap things up on that note. Thank you again to our patrons for supporting the YouTube channel. Their names scrolled by at the beginning, and thank you again to our patrons of Darkness and all of you who tune in every week to Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share if you watched this video and you enjoyed it, and I will see all of you in the next one, and until then, take care.